Now, the death penalty is here for the sin of blasphemy. And we have an incident here that is quite interesting, because in the book of Leviticus, there are only two incidents, two episodes recorded. One was the one of Nadab and Abihu back in Leviticus 10. We've already looked at that. And why is this second one given to us? Well, it seems entirely out of keeping with the instructions given here, but we need to recognize the fact that God is teaching a great lesson concerning blasphemy. Then this boy, and I think I should read this. Let me read verses 10 and 12. And the son of an Israelitish woman, whose father was an Egyptian, went out among the children of Israel, and this son of the Israelitish woman and a man of Israel strove together in the camp, and the Israelitish woman's son blasphemed the name of the Lord and cursed. And they brought him unto Moses, and his mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri, of the tribe of Dan, and they put him in ward that the mind of the Lord might be showed them. Now, will you notice this? Who was this boy that did this? Well, we're told he's the son of an Israelitish mother and an Egyptian father, and he's the one that did the blaspheming. That tells us something. We're going to find out later on that mixed multitude, which we saw back in Exodus 12:38, we are told then, and a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. Now, the mixed multitude is the one that actually started all the trouble in the camp. They began to murmur, and they caused strife, and it began with that group over numbers. And we'll see this later. I'll read this, though. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? Now you see, they were problem children. They were troublemakers. And what is the explanation? Well, I think the explanation is quite simple. Here was this boy. He had an Egyptian father. He had an Israelitish mother. Now there came a day when the children of Israel were to leave the land of Egypt, and they are to go out and into the promised land. The Egyptian father's not going. The Israelitish mother's going. That's a separation right there. And you can see now one of the reasons that God tells his people, both then and now, there should not be intermarriage between a believer and an unbeliever. Don't misunderstand me. There are a lot of people going to raise 100 questions about whether this one should marry that one. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about a believer and an unbeliever. Hasn't anything in the world to do with race. But it's wrong for a believer to marry an unbeliever. And I don't care about color of skin. They both could be the same color, could be as white as snow or as black as ink. Wouldn't make any difference if both of them were the same color. If one's a believer, the other an unbeliever, it's wrong. It's wrong. God says it's wrong. I don't say it's wrong. I'd never know it was wrong if he hadn't said it. Now, the thing that happened was this. When the children of Israel went out, that boy who's a half-breed's got a problem. Is he going to stay with Papa or is he going with Mama? Now, some stayed with Papa. I'm not sure, but maybe there were a couple more boys in this family. They stayed back with their dad. This boy went along. And the one that went along and the one that stayed would always have a problem. Well, I wonder if I should have done the other thing. And this mixed multitude, you can see when they came out of Egypt, they had a question to begin with whether they should even leave Egypt. They didn't want to leave Egypt. Now that they left Egypt, they get out in the wilderness, and the going gets rough. What do? They begin to complain. They'd be the first ones to complain. Now, friends, we have those in the church. We have unsaved people in the church. They've got one foot in the church, one foot in the world. And they're the ones you have trouble with today. I've been in the church a long time. I'm not in it anymore, so I can, I guess, speak rather freely. And that is that there are a lot of troublemakers today. And my experience has been that there's always a question about the salvation of a troublemaker. Always. I've never quite understood men that would block the giving out of the Word of God. You may or may not be surprised to hear that the greatest opposition I had in this radio program never came from the outside. It never came from unbelievers. But you know that I had certain, well, let me call them church members, that tried to wreck this radio program. I'm amazed at that. I never was so shocked at anything in my life. You would think that they would at least come and pat you on the back and say, brother, God bless you. I hope that you can get the Word of God out. Now, they wouldn't have any part in it. I know that. But the point is, you would think they'd at least be for getting the Word of God out. This boy, he was a mess, by the way. And he's the one that's going to cause the trouble, you see. Now, he got in a fight. And you can understand how that would come about. And after he got in the fight, why, he blasphemed the name of God. And that is something we need to understand God takes note of today. This seems to be something that's pretty serious to God, to blaspheme His name. Now, he blasphemed the name of the Lord, and he cursed the name that was sacred in Israel. There's a question today how you pronounce it. Is it Yahweh or Jehovah? I personally don't know. It was holy, so holy that they didn't pronounce it. But this blasphemer, he could pronounce it. I heard a man the other day in a luncheon in a private club where I was invited by one of the members for lunch. And a man at a table next to us, he used the name of God more than I've ever used it in any sermon. I told that to a friend of mine. He sure is using the name of God. But he doesn't use it like I use it in a sermon. He was blaspheming.